All right, so before we move forward, looks like, let's see, looks like doesn't like my return here. This has to be outside, obviously. Has to be outside of our for or if there. So it was inside, it has to be outside for it to work. So we're still inside of our if statement here. So click there, you can see these lines, guiding lines. It ends here. So I'm going to say else, because things could happen. Just to save ourselves, I'm going to then say throw, to throw some sort of an exception. So the exception is going to be throwing, it's going to say error, and then I'm going to pass the information. So at least us as developers will know exactly what's going on. So I'm going to pass here, should be error. Response object has a lot of information, metadata we can use so that we can know exactly if something went wrong, what went wrong. So I want the response to give me a reason phrase. So there is that field we can call that will give us the reason why this didn't work out. That's the error that will be thrown. So now that this FetchBooks is ready, which means we'll have all the books and we'll return those books, we go back to our search method, because this is what is called, and then it calls this FetchBooks. And of course here you see it's passing the information or the query, and we can change that right away in our FetchBooks here too. We can change this to query. It doesn't really matter, but query is great. And instead of just going say JavaScript as we write here, we're going to make this dynamic, and I'm going to say, so we're going to pass this query that we'll receive when we call the FetchBooks instead of search. What we need to do here is something different, because remember, if you hover over this, FetchBooks is a future type which will return list books, which means we have a few things that we can do with the future, which means we can expect to receive something when this runs, right? So I can say dot, then there's a promise, right? And this then here, if you hover over, this is going to be a list of books, because it's saying once we fetch these books, we go through this process of fetching these books, we're going to return a list of books. Right? Because the future type, we can say then, once this process is finished, we're going to receive all those books. Hover over, you can see this is a list of books. Let me change this to convert that to block body. All right, so we have now, we can just pass, we have our value, which is indeed the list of books. So now that we have this object, I can just do something like this. I can do for each, for I again, and then say value, which is a list of books. Finish that there. And I can just print those books. Now remember, this item here, if you hover over, is going to be a book. Look at that. It's a book item, which is exactly what we want. So it's much easier for now for us to say something like this. Item, and invoke get the author, for instance, like that. Okay, as we parse. So this is essentially going to be the same as what we had here. We're just going to go ahead and get the title. But look the difference now, because we have extracted all the books, we created this searched book object, and we added into our books list, which then is passed on whatever this is called. In this case, is here. And then we can actually then use that book object, as you see, hover over there, and just say the author, and we should get the author. And we can also pass, because this is a future type, because we're passing here a promise, future there, I can also pass on error. If something happens, something goes wrong, I want to know exactly what's going on. So I can pass this val as the value that we are going to receive if something goes wrong, and I can throw exception such, and then I can pass a message. So I'm going to say failed to load books, and then I can just pass along a value so I know exactly what's going on. Val toString, like this. What's important here is that we are able then here to do whatever we want. In this case, I'm just going to print out the name of the author for all the books, but we can do literally whatever we want. Okay, so I'm going to save this. Make sure I save main too, so that we don't run into those issues. And let's see if this works. I can just, now we can actually type something. Let's say mobile development, hit enter. Let's go to terminal. And it looks like we're having some issues. Let's probe in and see what's going on. Step in. All right. Looks like this exception failed to load books. No such method as an empty list. dynamic call on a null, and so forth. So what is going on? So it looks like we're not getting the information that we need. So let's see. First of all, let's see if this is being called. I'm going to say print and say calling FetchBooks, just to make sure things are actually being called when they're supposed to be called. And also I'm going to put inside here, this is calling search. Okay, let's save this. Okay, and sometimes we just have to stop and rerun everything all over again. That's fine. Test again, say Flutter development. Could be anything really, but since we're talking about Flutter, okay, it fails again. Calling search, and looks like we're still having the same issue. Goes through, and there we go. Next, let's make sure that our list, our for loop here, we're getting the right information. Okay, so let's look at volume.info.title. Let's go back to, okay, that's the field title. Then we have subtitle. It's still showing all these issues. That's fine. Title. We don't have subtitle. That's fine. We have an issue here. So this says author, whereas the field is actually authors, as in plural. That is maybe the problem. Let's go ahead and change this to authors, both sides of the equation here. And let's see if this works. So save. Okay, let's go ahead and say Flutter development. Hit enter. Let's go back to our terminal. And voila. Looks like search FetchBooks is working, and then we have all of these authors, because that's exactly what we want to show. Let's go to our search here. So print item.author. Very good. So we're getting the books. And you can count here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is the amount of books that we are getting. If you go back to our payload here, let's close all of these. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these 10 default items that are all returned every time we make a call to this API. At least we know that we're able to create, or at least go ahead and do some search here. Let's call this psychology of money. Hit enter. And there we go. It shows books pertaining to psychology of money. Okay, so at least we know that things are working. So this is a good step in the right direction.